Hey, music fans, and welcome back to SoundLab Studios. We are continuing through our Album of the Year series in the 1970s. This year is going to be 1976. Possibly one of my favorite years ever for music. This one and the next one, 76, 77 are probably my favorite years, but every year in the 70s is amazing. And making my list for this year was nearly impossible. So many albums I wanted to put on this list. One particular album that I thought was going to be on this list, but wasn't, sadly. So, well, we're going to go ahead and get to the top five of 1976. Nick from Townsend 505 now is here, and if you've never watched an album of the year video, we just like to switch off. I go, he goes, and there he goes and I go, and then we do like some honorable mentions, everything we wanted to have in our list but didn't, and then the top album of 1976. So here we go with number five.
My number five, I agree with. Well, wasn't as hard because all I just did was like uh, like I just did my five favorite albums that was in my top 100 and did that. And I'd say I'm pretty happy with my list. Uh, Definitely, of course, it's like these music lists are always subject to change. It's music lists are always hard to like maintain because you're always discovering an album. Sometimes an album you grow on more. Sometimes you're like, oh, why did I put this album over that album? So it always happens. First album on my list is going to be an album that I just listened to yesterday, and a particular someone just listened to the first song on the album for the first time, Jacob Martin. After that, of course, it's 2112. I'm proud to have this on my list. Epic 20-minute song about basically about music and basically their like fu to the music executives because to put in the backstory, their previous album Caress with Steel did not do well at all because they were diving more into prog rock, and the last two tracks on that album were like 10-plus minute tracks, and one was like even like a side closer, the Fountain of Laminate.
18 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, but still, it's just like a long prog song, and like the record executives are like, "Yeah, don't do that. Basically, we want you to become a sellout band, and we want you to change." And basically, they were like, "We are no sellout band," and they made 2112, and the rest is history. Um, the overture song in the beginning of the track is basically good enough to rank it here on this list. But the rest of the track is just brilliant. I don't want to spoil it, but it's just like one of those things where you just gotta listen to it for yourself. The second side of the record isn't um as crazy as the first side. The second side is more just like more of their more usual songs that you get from Rush at the time. I still think they're a lot better than the songs from their first two albums, Fly By Night and Self Titled. But it's like songs that you would expect from like Caress of Steel, but that doesn't take it away from it though.
Kind of like Bastille Day, and I think I'm going bald, Lakeside Park kind of stuff.
Yeah, they're really good. Don't get me wrong, but like that's kind of the reason why 2112 isn't any higher on my list is because the first side is just way better than the second side, in my opinion, of course.
My first one, number five, is going to be an album by Steely Dan called The Royal Scam. And this album is really amazing. This is kind of their first album as a studio experiment rather than an actual band. I mean, Katie Lied was kind of the transition between the two, but this is kind of the first one where they're really a studio band rather than a live band at this point. Kid Charlemagne is amazing. I love Larry Carlton's guitar playing on this entire record. Caves of Altamira is amazing. Don't Take Me Alive, The Fez, Green Earrings, Haitian Divorce, the title track. It's a really funky record. Lots of great guitar playing, drumming, bass playing, keyboard playing, and there's some cool horn sections on some of the songs too. So, The Royal Scam by Steely Dan, number five.
Good number five. Sally didn't make it in my honorable mentions because I always limit them to only 10, so it didn't make it. I didn't make it in my honorable mentions either. My number four is going to be an album by fantastic band called Genesis. It's Sweet Chick of the Tail. Um, this is their first out. This is their first album without their basically their lead singer Peter Gabriel. Phil Collins takes the lead on this album, and he would end up taking lead for basically the rest of their discography, except for the last album, which is called On Stations. Which that album doesn't exist in my mind, but hey, Trick of the Tail is just really great songs. You know, yes,
I just did that one.
yeah. I always notice he always mentions Steely Dan. He's a big Steely Dan
He's a
fan.
big Steely Dan fan.
Yes. Um,
I think he found the channel through our Royal Scam review.
huh. Cool. Yeah, that's cool because that's a good way to discover this channel. I like I said, I like Steely Dan. They're not one of my favorites to be honest, but they're good. Um, Dance on the Volcano is really good. Like honestly, I like sometimes I could mistake if I didn't know any better, I would mistake this to be like something that would be on like Foxtrot. That's how good it is, or like Sounding by the Pound. Entangled is really good song. Squonk is amazing. Madman Moon is in my top five favorite songs from them. It's just I love that song. Robbery, Assault, and Battery, great song. Ripples is a great song too. Title track is amazing, and Los Endos is a great closer. Just just great prog rock. I wish they did more albums like this with Phil Collins. Don't get me wrong, I like Invisible Touch. I really like that album, and I like their '80s albums, but I really like when they did it with. I really like when they did their prog rock stuff with Phil Collins. But yeah, that's just what I think.
That's
Yeah,
why
my
you got to
number.
listen to the Seconds Out live album. You get
Mhm.
some Peter Gabriel stuff and some live Trick of the Tail stuff, and he does the full suppers ready. It's
Yeah, I
really
know.
cool.
It's really close to being as good as the Peter Gabriel version.
All right. My number 4 is going to be an album by Queen called "A Day at the Races." This is an album that I just listened to recently. I mean, I'd heard it before, but I just listened to it again recently, and I forgot how good it was. Almost as good as A Night at the Opera, in my opinion, which is one of my favorite albums of all time. It's got some really great songs on it, some really great deep cuts as well, like The Millionaire's Waltz and White Man are two really amazing, like lesser known songs. But it's also got Somebody to Love, which is a really big hit, and it's got a Good Old Fashioned Lover Boy, which was a kind of a more minor hit. And then there's a song called You and I, which I think is really underrated. And there's a song that they recorded specifically for their Japanese audience called Teo Toriate, if I'm saying that correctly, which is a really good way to end the album. I like pretty much all the stuff on the album, other than I'm not too crazy on Drowse, but the rest of the album is amazing.
That's fair. I know Jason really likes that track.
When it comes to Roger Taylor, I like Radio Gaga.
Mm. I actually really like his stuff. I'm in love with my car, Drowse. I love his stuff. Uh, my number three is going to be an album by Bob Dylan. So got to get Bob Dylan in the album list again. Desire from 1976. This is basically him. Basically, I forgot which person it was, but he basically had a violinist play on basically the whole album. I forgot her name. I really feel bad for not remembering her name because she's like the big highlight on this album. The violin played on Hurricane is just top notch. It's easily that and the ballad of Frankie Lee and Jewish Priest are my two favorite Bob Dylan tracks. Especially Hurricane. I love Hurricane. I fell in love with it the first time I heard it, and I still love it to this day. It's just a really good song. Um, Isis is a really good song. Another longer song. I quite like that song. One More Cup of Coffee. I love that song. Oh Sister, Joey, Sarah. Just amazing songs. I think Bob Dylan does. I don't think this album gets enough credit where credit is due. I think more people pay attention to the album that came before, which is also great, but which is Blood on the Tracks. I think that album's really good, and I think that's probably his second best album. But I don't think this album gets enough attention compared to that album. But that's just my opinion. And I think this album's amazing.
My number 3 album is an album I discovered just recently by the Alan Parsons Project called Tales of Mystery and Imagination, Edgar Allan Poe. And today's actually Edgar Allan Poe's birthday, apparently, so a little tie-in. But I was just blown away whenever I heard this. I'd heard the Eye in the Sky album, which also blew me away, but this album is amazing. It's kind of a concept album about Edgar Allan Poe, doing some of his most famous works. Um, Alan Parsons was the engineer on Dark Side of the Moon, so you know this thing's going to sound amazing. There's kind of guest vocalists on every song. A Dream Within a Dream is a really cool instrumental at the beginning, and then like you hear this bass like they're like boom, 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 and then you get into the Raven, which is a really cool song. It uses a vocoder. Telltale Heart is amazing. Cask of Amontillado is amazing. Dr. Tar and Professor Feather, I love that one. The Follow the House of Usher is kind of like he mixes classical music with rock instruments and is kind of more classically inspired, and it's really amazing. And the ending of that song is just haunting. And then you get to One in Paradise at the end, which is an amazing way to end the album. It's my number 3 of 1976.
Good album. I'm excited to review that album when we start the Alan Parsons Project series.
We're going to have to do Yes first, though.
Okay. Number 2 is going to be an album by Stevie Wonder, which, funny enough, I always just talk about him on my channel with my top 100 albums.
The only reason that's not on my list is because I haven't listened to it enough. I know it deserves a spot in the top 5. I just haven't listened to it enough.
That's fair. That's fair. I assume it's in your honorable mentions at least.
It is, most definitely.
I think this album's freaking amazing. This is his last album in his classic period. I was just talking about the first album in his classic period, which is Music of My Mind. So it's cool to talk about that. I was just talking about how Stevie Wonder was basically just not doing what he wanted for the longest time in the 60s until his contract ended. And he was like, I want to do what I want to do. And, he's one of their best-selling artists, so Motown kind of had no choice but to let him do what he wanted to do. And he took a lot of inspiration from Marvin Gaye. That was his big influence around this time of music making. And this album really shows how independent he becomes. Like the first, the first 2 or 3 albums from the classic period really shows influence from Marvin Gaye, but this album shows his own influences. It's like songs about life. Love, growing up, becoming a parent, him finding appreciation to Jesus, and God. There's a song called "Have a Talk with God." Just like a bunch of different things thrown into one album, and it works perfectly. And I could go on forever. How I could make like a whole banter of how each song is just great, but I don't want to take up the video too long. But all I just gotta say is music is a language.
World within itself.
Music is a world within itself. Yes, and really really good stuff though. And check it out if you have not. This is one of the most.
Pastime Paradise is better than Gangsta's Paradise.
Yeah, because Stevie Wonder's not ripping off people. It's actually the original. Okay. I would say at least when Weird Al does it, at least he asked for it.
Okay. Number 2 is going to be 2112 by Rush. Nick already talked about this one, but it's absolutely amazing. I love both sides of the record, but the first side is a lot better. I like the concept, kind of the futuristic, like music and creativity are like under control, and like the guy finds the guitar and is like, oh, I can make my own music. Really great singing from Geddy Lee. Like he changes his voice to play different characters. The musicianship is amazing as always, and I really like the Twilight Zone is great. Something for Nothing, Tears is insanely good.
Oh yeah, I agree.
And Passage to Bangkok. That's kind of a funny song, but really great album. 2112. It's my number 2 of 1976.
Great album. As for my honorable mentions, like I said, I always limit myself to 10. Children of the World by Bee Gees. Wings at the Speed of Time by McCartney and Wings. I think the Commodore mentioned that album. Yep. 33 and a Third by George Harrison. Presents by Led Zeppelin, mostly because of Killer's Last Stand.
Oh, yeah. That's a great song. But
Rest of the album is. I know you hate that album, but it's not that bad of an album. I know
it's
you.
just because it's Led Zeppelin and everything else they released is amazing. And that's most of that album is just eh.
That's fair. I think it's an okay. I think it's a good album. Agents of Fortune by Blue Oyster Cult.
Don't fear the reaper. I got a fever, and my only prescription is more cowbell.
Number 10, Black and Blue by the Rolling Stones.
Really?
Rocks. I actually like that album now. Rocks by Aerosmith. Station to Station by David Bowie. These next two I'm going to mention are my top 100 albums, but they didn't make it on my list. Boston by Boston and Arrival by ABBA. And those are my honorable mentions. And oh yeah, you go to my number 1 now. Unless you do your honorable mentions.
I'm gonna do the honorable mentions. Hotel California by the Eagles. I really wanted that to be on the list. I'm so upset that's not. Another one I really wanted to be on the list was a New World Record by Electric Light Orchestra. Songs in the Key of Life by Stevie Wonder. Fly Like an Eagle by the Steve Miller Band. Left Overture by Kansas. Taking It to the Streets by the Doobie Brothers. Turnstiles by Billy Joel. Like so many of these albums I wish could be in the top 10. And then A Trick of the Tail by Genesis.
Cool. My number 1 is going to be an album that Scott already mentioned. Day of the Races by Queen. Definitely Queen's best album. It's in my top 25 albums of all time. I mean, yeah, it's just that good. It's such a great album. I'm not gonna go too in detail on this album because I will be making a full video on this when I get to that album in my top 100 album series. Tie Your Mother Down, amazing opener. Take My Breath Away.
I forgot about that one. That one's amazing.
One of the best love songs of all time. Walk Away, one of the most underrated Brian May songs. Millionaire's Waltz, I agree, is super underrated. You and I also very underrated.
I heard You and I and thought, why wasn't this a big hit whenever I listened to that record?
It's because it wasn't a single, and
I think it was a B-side, but
it was a B-side too. But Queen wasn't really known for making like album tracks like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones were like Here Comes the Sun and Give Me Shelter were big hits, but they weren't singles. And I don't think there was a single Queen song that was really that big on radio if that was a album track. So that's a shame. Of course, Somebody to Love, one of the all-time best songs from them. Never gets old. White Man, easily the best song on the album. It sounds like something that like Rush would do if they were doing the scale of Queen. Really, really good song. I could just imagine Geddy Lee or like Peter Gabriel singing this song. Really good song. Imagine if Peter Gabriel sung this song. Oh my god. Oh, that'd be so good. Good Old Fashioned Lover Boy. Guilty Pleasure. Such a good song. It's such a guilty pleasure of mine. It's so stupid. I know it's stupid, but I love it. I disagree.
Hey boy.
I love Drowse a lot. It's one of my favorites. I also really love Tio Toriate. Great closer. Enough said. It's a perfect album. Yeah, it's such a good album.
My number 1 album of 1976 used to be my favorite album not by the Beatles. Now it is my second favorite album not by the Beatles because of something else I heard recently, but Boston by Boston, 1976. This album is amazing. I love every song on it. It was pretty much written in the guitarist or recorded in the guitarist's basement. The guitar playing is absolutely insane. More Than a Feeling, Long Time, Peace of Mind, Rock and Roll Band, Smokin', Something About You. Those songs are all perfect. Let Me Take You Home Tonight is okay. Oh, and Hit Your, oh my goodness, how could I forget Hit Your Ride? That one's perfect too. Let Me Take You Home Tonight is okay. It's good, but it like doesn't really fit the rest of the album. It's a good way to close the album, and it's definitely my least favorite on the album. But everything else is like top notch, absolutely insane. And
What's the
my
name of the
first,
song where it's like bum 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 bum? I forgot the name of it.
oh, Something About You.
Something About You. That's the best song on the album, in my opinion.
Isn't easy to show what I'm feeling inside. And Brad Delp's voice is amazing. I can't do it justice. But absolutely great album. My favorite of 1976.
That's a great album. Uh, yeah, it's just like you said. This album's such a good year for music. So making this top five list was hard in that sense of not being able to include Boston in the list.
All right, well, that concludes the top 5 albums of 1976. I'm very excited to talk about next year, which is probably my favorite year in music, 1977. And the list is going to be even more difficult to narrow down. But thank you guys for watching. We will see you next time. Until then, art or music is art, and art is expression. Oh, I forget what I said. What's that thing? Music is art, and art is expression.
Which means music is expression.
Yeah. See you later.